All right. Hi, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us today for this Q&A and getting to know your business better. So obviously you struck our attention because during COVID, we were trying to, do what we could to show up as humans. And we noticed that you had a very strong, similar, if not same core value that was showing up in your communication. And you were kind enough to offer support for a family of tenants to those who needed it during that time. And it was just, you were somebody who was spoken about during our team meetings. And it was so refreshing to see that, and so nice to see that, that there was people carving out the space to make it more about we rather than I. So yeah, I wanted to kind of start out and just say, like, tell us about your company. It's called SHERO. um,
Yes.
how did you start and get involved in this concept? Tell us all about it.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. It is a pleasure meeting you, meeting your father, meeting the whole family in this business building, because every time I come and go, I find something fascinating and I learn something new from somebody, right? And you're absolutely right. We are in line because I see some of the notices that are in the elevator. For instance, it says about talking about evolution. I was going to say revolution, but no,
Yeah.
evolution. And I'm like, yeah, that's very much in line, and exactly what you just said, talking about we as opposed to me. So in light of what you just asked, what is SHERO?
Yeah.
So SHERO can be it's a huge umbrella, right? It can be many things. So for the context of this interview and the fact that we're probably addressing entrepreneurs, basically SHERO is an acronym, and it's an acronym that stands for living your life with spirituality, humanity, enlightenment, responsibility, and opportunity. Now, just to break it down a little bit, so kind of like a little nugget pieces of what that means. So when I'm speaking about spirituality, I'm not talking about religion by any means. I'm talking about the fact that we're all connected.
Sure.
And how now more than ever, everybody can clearly and vividly see that thanks to COVID, right? Like how connected and interdependent we are. So it was just like, wow, gee, thank you, universe. I know it's a very, very dramatic way of showing it, but this is what I mean by spirituality. So humanity, what you were saying earlier in terms of, it's not just about what's in it for me. Everybody always talks about the what's in it for me, the acronym kind of thing. But it's about giving, and it's about more about we now, because the way we're moving forward, we can't sustain ourselves. Civilization can't sustain itself the way it is, especially with this us versus them mindset and whatnot. So just the focus on what can I do in my business for my employees, what can I do for my family, not just like what can they do for me, what can they do for them, for me to grow my business so I can drive a Lamborghini, right? It's not about that. It's about just the connectivity of how everybody can work with each other and grow in their own lives. Enlightenment is massive and so crucial for businesses. We know that if you don't grow your business, you die, right?
Yeah.
So enlightenment means is you have to learn something new every day. So whether it's something to do with your personality, something to do with the world around you, and part of it is the more you know, the less people can manipulate you, right? The less of oh, did you hear what so-and-so said and you're reacting to it or whatever. Like, you are a knowledge-based individual. But for business, it's incredibly necessary. You can't just start a business and stop. You have to take courses, you have to expand. And in order to do that, you got to keep, growing that gray matter, just like unraveling it, right? Responsibility is, a lot of people say, why does this happen to me? Or why is my mother-in-law like this? Or why does the wind always blow spit my way, kind of thing. But the reality is, it's not that things don't happen in life. Things happen in our lives all the time, whether it's in your business life, whether it's in your personal life, your relationships, whatever. But what makes us different, and what makes one person more successful than the other, is your ability to respond to these situations, right? Like, how are you responding? Are you responding with a negative mindset, with a negative belief, or are you responding with something more positive, twisting it around so it's like pivoting in a way that it suits you and benefits you so you can take the next step?
Yes.
And like I said, I'm really going fast through these points, but just to get like a little bit nugget of information, enough to get people curious. And opportunity is like one of my favorite ones, especially when it comes to business, in terms of there's no such thing as a lost opportunity or failure. Like from everything you learn something. I look at a chair in my office and I think, how many times was the person making that chair failed making it until the chair became the chair. When we were babies, we didn't try walking, go, F it, we don't want to walk anymore, we can't do it, right? I mean, some examples I use is Lincoln. His fiance died. He lost like 8 elections. He lost 2 businesses, and yet he kept persevering. And people don't know that about him. They just think, oh, right? They just think, oh, Lincoln came out of the box and he was the president and he did this and he did that. And then no, he was like one failure after another, but he kept persevering. So that's the opportunity, seizing the opportunity for learning and growth. And basically that monstrous umbrella, which is SHERO, is meant to be constructive mindset to kind of push you forward anytime you're in a state of angst, as opposed to, why is this happening to me? Why was this going on? Why can't I be like so-and-so? As opposed to looking at other people and comparing yourself, it's about you becoming a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. And then tomorrow you'll become even a better version. So no comparison. And one basic and very integral part of SHERO, the massive takeaway, is it has to be all-inclusive.
Okay.
So SHERO brings in people of all genders, all nations, all races, all cultures, any which way you want to dissect the world. And God help us, we dissect the world every which way, right? Right?
Yes.
So it doesn't really matter. For it to work, everybody has to, so whether you think liberal, whether you think conservative, whether you really disagree with someone on their viewpoints, it doesn't mean you have to hate them. It means that you have a conversation and you try to have a conversation with this platform to kind of bridge a gap somehow.
Yeah, makes
right?
sense.
Does that answer what SHERO is roughly?
Yes, totally. I mean, and so what I understand is you touched earlier, before we got on this call, we were having kind of a real conversation that's
Right.
also real here.
Yes.
So I'm going to bring it back in.
Okay.
It's, we talked about belief systems, and
Yes.
you were mentioning, you're like, actually, it was funny, guys. For those of you listening, she was challenging me, and I think that's good, because I think we constantly, and I was like, man, I'm like, maybe this is going to turn into like a visible therapy session for everybody watching. Really entertaining.
That's the beauty of this thing, and I think that's one of the challenges. And I want this to be like a very comfortable conversation, right? Yeah, it's a raw conversation. And I mean, obviously, before every interview, I get some points out because I want to make sure certain points are articulated. But I know, like I've talked about SHERO for over 10 years now, and I'm not the same person talking today as I was 10 years ago. Even my mindsets evolved and examples have evolved and whatnot. You were asking earlier, before I get on to belief systems, where does this come from? Where did it come from?
Yeah.
And to make a very long story short,
yes.
I know we have a limited time. To be honest, I was one of those kids where when we immigrated here to Vancouver in 1979 from Iran, and we were an Armenian, a small minority, and before the revolution started, we got the heck out of Dodge kind of thing. So I've never even lived in Armenia. I wasn't born in Armenia. In fact, I was born in Germany. So here we go. So I've got this mindset from Germany. I've gone into Iran. I've got this belief systems, and I'm going to tie belief systems and this history together so you can see the
yes.
So from Iran, we come here, and now there's a different mindset here in terms of how North American life should be and all that. So I'm the kind of child that most parents dread, because I say why.
Everything.
Because I'm questioning everything. And for me, when somebody tells me you got to do this, I'm like, why? Right? So my father would say, because I said so. And I'm like, but you don't do it, right? You don't do it. Can you imagine this bullshit? You don't do it. And my dad's best rebuttal was, don't do as I do, do as I say. so my dad had his hands full with me for sure. But I think part of it was, when you know the why, like at an early age, when you know and because I kind of grew up really fast, because when we came here, there was, and I can relate to a lot of first generation immigrants, there was a lot of uncertainty. We didn't have our papers. I got out of school. I was taken out of one school, then I was taken out of another school. And even before coming here, we went to England. So I was taken out of schools. So I kind of got used to jumping around and all the different mindsets and whatnot, which is fine. I grew up really fast. So the whys became even more important for me.
Yeah.
Fast forward into high school, political science and university. and all the belief systems that are associated with them as you being still raised as an Armenian. Because you have grandparents now that are living with you saying, see this world around you that you have all this opportunity? You only get to marry an Armenian because nobody else will understand you better than your own kind.
Wow.
Now that's a belief system,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's a massive, and I think a lot of people can resonate with that. So that's why I share that story.
Yes.
Like, and then it kept going in terms of my marriage, and my marriage to an Armenian failed. So now I'm panicking, going, wait a minute, if he doesn't get me, then who's going to get me, right? Because I've bought into this belief system.
Yes.
Like, keep in mind, belief systems aren't facts. These are things that we've even inherited, but we act and walk and talk as if they're true. So then we look for things to prove our points, kind of, right?
Yes.
So the turning point for SHERO came during that. So that was the major turbulent right there, when within our culture at the time, now I'm talking about 20 years ago. Now I know it's become a bit easier and people do get divorces and whatever, but I was the front line and I took a massive hit taking a divorce, and the beliefs associated with that came, don't talk to her, she's got a job, she's got money in her pocket, so therefore she has a long tongue. Like, it gets lost in translation, right? But I think you understand what I'm saying. And at the time I was also working in the marine industry, so it was a very male dominated industry, and I was the only female. So I'm getting hit with ethnic things coming this way, and I'm getting hit with other things from the other side saying, why are all you women like this? And I'm like, who am I representing here? Well, am I representing all the women in the world? Because I was the only, like, you know what I mean? So turbulence. I had to end the marriage because it wasn't working, because I was another belief system. I had a gentleman who was traditional when it suited him, but wanted a modern woman. So we had a business together, we had a jewelry store together, so it was no problem for me to work in the marine industry and fund the business, but at the same time, make sure the house is clean, dinner is on the table, and all that jazz. Do you see?
Of course.
So from all that, all these things are stemming, and the why is still there, right? That little kid and the why. Why is this happening? Why is this important? Why do I have to subject myself to all these things? And I have to say, Tina, there came a point where I had gained 50 pounds, because that's what happens when you start building resentment in you and your values aren't being met. And I see that around now that's one of the first things I look for, trigger points, when people are starting to get depressed and detached and whatnot. So that was happening to me. And I happened to be one of those women. One day I just like flopped on the couch and turned on Oprah, and she was talking about SHERO. And for her, it meant a female hero.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, but no, because like it was one nugget, like a little bit of a seed, but I'm like, no, because it still does us versus them, female versus male.
Feel right.
So it didn't feel right, but I kept it. But I kept it so much so that I incorporated a company back then in '99.
What?
I didn't even know what SHERO was for me, but it resonated with me. That's how in tune I was with it.
You felt like somewhere this word is just really there.
It means something. So is it a word? Does it mean but I didn't see myself as a female SHERO, because it's not that I'm not a feminist. It's not that I don't want equality, but I look at it differently. I want more inclusivity. I want everybody to, I'm more about human rights.
Yes.
No matter who it is, female, male, undecided, however you want to define yourself, right? So that was the first turbulence. And then a whole bunch of other things happened. And I'm going to go straight to the point where in 2008, I had a really dear friend of mine with brain tumor who passed away. But in that 2-year period prior to that, we had amazing conversations. And I started talking SHERO with him. And without even knowing what SHERO was in terms of personal development, we were talking about positive psychology, which was a new school of thought back then. It wasn't as prevalent as it is right now. We started talking about coaching and all that stuff. And I basically made a promise to him before his passing that I would follow through. And that was kind of the push.
Wow.
So he passed away in May of 2008. And by August of 2008, I was enrolled in a coaching program in 2010, sorry. And I was like, I just started going, and you know, when you're in an environment, when you have a bunch of like-minded people,
of course,
you feel safe.
Yeah.
and you start opening up, because I hadn't had that for a long time, because every time I felt like I opened up, there was a community criticism, or there was, who does she think she is, or whatever. You can't help it. You start kind of withdrawing. So that's the other thing where I can relate to others, where I can see that withdrawal, that sense of feeling that they're going to be criticized, or people are going to see that they're less than, and all that stuff. So anyway, as I was sitting in class, I was writing out SHERO, SHERO, and it literally came to me, Tina, and I always get goosebumps when I tell this story.
Okay.
I wrote out spirituality, humanity, enlightenment, responsibility, and opportunity. And I was in a trance, and I kept writing it over and over and over.
Wow.
And it went from there. I got my first level certification from ICF accredited coaching program. And I started, and I wrote this puppy, From Sheep to Sheep.
Yes, I love
Transforming the face of tribal BS. And by BS, I don't mean, I mean belief systems.
Funny. Okay. I had read that.
I was trying to get people's attention with that, because I was a first-time author. And the entrepreneurial side kicked in, because that was the time when there was a recession and nobody was into new authors, and even an agent wouldn't represent you because they don't know who you are and you don't have Facebook followers, or la 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 la. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it myself. So I opened up a publishing company.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And I called it Tumest. And I borrowed that from UBC, because that means in Latin, it's up to you. And I'm like, I'm going to create a platform where I'm going to attract a bunch of like-minded people who are into personal development and have a story that they want to share with the world. And they're not going to have ability to get to Random House or HarperCollins or whatever. They're going to come to Tumest, right? If Wayne Dyer did it, and Louise Hay did it, and these are people in the personal development, yes, right? They did that. They self-published, and look at them now. And I mean,
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I'm like, hey, they can do it. And it's not that you're being cocky or whatever. You're just saying, no, that opportunity exists. And one step further, right?
What are you willing to do to put your message out there?
Message out. And I'm not saying it hasn't been an instant success, but the success was the fact that it didn't sit on the shelf.
Yes.
And I only printed 750 copies, but they went like this. So and the community that I thought would criticize me, the same community that used to say, don't let your daughters hang around her, she'll put ideas in their heads.
Yeah, I know, similar culture,
right? So they eat it up. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. But so that was the catalyst in SHERO becoming SHERO. And then the longer it's been, and the longer it goes, and the more I talk about it, the more examples through business come up. Because I've always been a businesswoman, right? So 18 years in the marine industry. And when my friend passed away, they also let me go of that job. So I got hit twice. So it gave me even more fuel to do SHERO.
Wow.
Right?
Wow, that's so great. The universe was kind of steering your direction even.
Yeah, it's almost like, hey, I think you've gotten too comfortable, right? So let me give you a boot. And you don't realize it at the time, but when you look back, you're like, oh, that's exactly why everything happened the way it happened, right? So, I mean, that's the catalyst behind SHERO. So SHERO wasn't like one day I just sat down, oh yeah, I think I'm going to write about, like it was an evolution. It was a whole bunch of little tremors.
Wow.
That led to that big turning point. So like you've already heard us mention how many belief systems in this conversation, right?
Yes.
So if somebody were to ask you, what is a belief? I always say it starts with a behavior, which is a feeling. And a feeling that turns into a need. So given our backgrounds, and it's not necessarily our ethnic backgrounds, I know there's a lot of people out there as well, so I don't want to just limit it to that demographic. But I find if I were to say that, like how can a SHERO mindset work in a conservative world? I think part of the way to approach it is to understand that the need that someone who's conservative and traditional comes from their fear of losing control.
Yeah.
Fear of, it's always been done this way, which is a belief. And why should I change this belief kind of thing, right? So, and if you look at it, how many of us have been in toxic environments where we didn't challenge the beliefs? We chose to stay in the toxic environment. We chose to stay in toxic relationships. We chose to stay in toxic friendships because we were okay with the common known, which is toxic, but we were fearful of what might be out there.
Very true.
And do you know what fear stands for, right? False evidence appearing real.
Yes, I've heard that one. Yes.
And that is a belief. Whereas a SHERO mindset says, no, face everything and rise.
Yes.
That's what fear really stands for. So why not take that opportunity to go to that next level? To, you know, I always use the analogy of a ship in a toxic harbor, and you're seeing all these pails of oil and this and that, whatever. Pull up your anchor, and I guess this comes from the marine industry.
I was just going to say.
So pull up your anchor and go outside, and you might get tossed around for a little bit, but you'll learn, and you'll be much more happier because you're persevering and you're pushing forward. And one of the main things to understand about SHERO is that it's not a threat. It's not a threat to what you know, or your ethnic background, or your nationality. Or I'm not suggesting you throw everything out. One of the things I always suggest to people is, I mean, if you're driving and you have a flat tire, what do? You throw the car away? No, you either put air in the tire or you change the tire if you need be, right? So you're adjusting a little bit, and that's all that it's about.
Yeah.
And it's basically being mindful of the beliefs. Like when a belief comes into your head, say, is this serving me, or is this taking me away from my goals, kind of thing. So that in itself is a combination of beliefs and where SHERO came from.
I love it. I love it. I was completely immersed in what you were telling me. And the point that really, one of the points, not just the point, one of the points that really caught my attention was the part where you talked about business and how it is meant to be a humanity-based thing, and it can be interrelated. And that's always been interesting for me, and really something that I feel like, sometimes I feel as though it seems foreign to a lot of people, or you don't need to be in the caring industry to bring humanity inside business. Exactly. I think that they're completely interrelated. They always have been. And it's just that we've kind of lost that notion because we watch movies like Wolves of Wall Street or all this stuff that's depicting a negative representation of what business should be. Business should be human-based. It should be, like you said, I loved how you said, being conscious and involving yourself as a business. It's going to start with you. You know, last week, I feel guided to share this, so I'm just going to share it.
Go for it. No, for sure.
Yeah, we did we did our core values. It's kind of in fine print, but the last one, we redid them because I really wanted to make sure that we were authentically sticking to it, but we have it on everybody's walls. And the last one that we have, and I told the team, I'm like, when this goes on all of our walls, first and foremost, I become accountable and everybody else.
Yeah.
And so, you know, our last one is about ownership and leadership of responsibility.
No, it's you.
And it's because it's funny. I said to them, I'm like, guys, this is a lot of pressure, but it's got to be because it starts with me. And if we do it, and if I do it, and the team does it, then that's how we're able to evolve and really serve the humanity we serve within the community we serve. It just happens to be real estate, right? But so I love that you said that. I've never really heard anybody else.
It can't be any other way. Like, and when you're serving, it's others. Sometimes a lot of people say, "Oh, you know, it's selfless." No, actually, it's not. I don't feel like I'm being selfless. In fact, it could be actually a little bit selfish because I feel good doing good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Right. So I feel good. So in a way, but it's something good. It's something constructive. So there's no guilt associated with that. Yeah. Okay. But are you manipulating someone? No, it's not about that. The end result is good, right? Yeah. If you are pretending to be someone else in order to get a result, that's a manipulation. Yes. But if that's your genuine motivation and core value in your life, then why not continue that way? But going back to some of the belief systems that we were talking about, I think when it comes to business, a shift has to change. There has to be a shift, and there has to be a change in the sense that some people, for instance, say kindness is a weakness, right? Like that's a belief. There's no studies that show kindness is a weakness. It's something that we've inherited. Or for instance, in order to be respected in business, you must be feared. Who says that?
Yes.
Something we've adopted. That's just something that we have adopted generation, and we think it's true. No, actually, not at all. If someone fears you, they'll do what you ask them to do once. But the second and third time, they might still do it, but they'll talk behind your back. They will do shady things, and they will look for ways to get out. And
Yes.
that's, but if you create a environment in a business where you're respected in the sense that out of your kindness, because you don't just tell people what to do, whatever you tell them to do, you would do yourself,
Yes.
right? So you're leading by example. That is the kind of respect that you can't put value on, because that employee, and I've seen it many times in many different situations, different businesses, different type of businesses, that employee will, if they need to stay late, they'll stay late. They won't even say anything. They'll do that extra bit. They will work from home, and you will reciprocate in another way. But the point is, everybody's working towards the same goal. They want to be here. Sometimes in a different, like I said, my brother has a business that I help him with. And one of the things that whenever we have our meetings there, I say, listen, you spend 8 hours of your day here. And I want you to be here not because of your paycheck, which ultimately everybody comes for, sure. But you're spending 8 hours of your day here, and you can go and spend 8 hours of your day anywhere else and get a paycheck. But I want you to be here because you choose to be here, right? Because you feel like it's a family, because you feel like our values are aligned, because we're all building towards the same goal, that there's selflessness here. We help each other. We don't throw each other under the bus. And we don't look, other companies look bad by putting them down, so we will look good. We just look good because of the things we do, the way we do it, and the way in which we support each other.
Yes.
So when you create an environment like that, people want to come to work.
Yes.
Right? And they come to work on time, and they are mindful of the breaks that they take, because it's not like a regime kind of environment and you clock in and you clock out. Right? It's like, that's the way I like to look at the world, right? I think in a world, especially today, especially in this COVID time, when we learn how interdependent we are, the flexibility is more crucial than ever, right? Working from home, all these people working from home. You have to have that ability. And sometimes, the first responders or the essentials, they had to go out. But that's part of it, and how everybody kind of came together. I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful example of how we can be. My thing is, it feels bad when it has to get to that point for people to do that.
Yes.
That phone call that says you have cancer, and all of a sudden that person's life changes.
Yes.
I'm trying to be preventative. I'm trying to tell you or share with the world, it's the journey, not destination. Don't wait until you have $1 million in the account to be happy. Don't wait until you have this house to be happy. Don't wait. Happiness comes from within, and it's the journey, not the destination, right? So, and it's what you do between now and then.
No, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I think you're right. I always use that example as a lot of people that need to wait until they get on their deathbeds. I don't think we need to wait that long. I think we need to, just basic consideration for others, basic, the golden principle really just simplifies it, in the world for me. It's actually one of our new core values too. It's just like, you don't need to have experienced something to understand how it feels. You just need to empathize and imagine how that feels, and that's enough, right? And that will shift your perception or your behavior and all that. And I think, we just
I'm smiling. I'm totally smiling, because what you're saying is spot on to some of the stuff that I've been hit with. Like if I've had clients that are parents, and one of the first things, because I'm not a parent, one of the first things they'll say to me is, you're not a parent, you don't understand. I'm like, I don't need to be a parent. In fact, from a global perspective, I get it. The day-to-day stresses, the picking up, the dropping off, the this, that, I get all that. I'm looking at it but I have friends who are parents and whatnot, and I graphically make a point, and it is a little bit graphic, but I go, I don't need, sorry, but to be raped, to know that rape is bad.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't need necessarily, and even if, God forbid, you experience something, not everybody experiences it the same way.
Yes.
Some people go through parenting, no problem, because of the mindset, because of the way they see it, because it's not about them, it's about the child, or whatever the case may be, right?
Yes.
So it's not doom and gloom, but it could be if that's what your belief system is.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. And so, like, on that note, what does a session look like with you? What is a coaching session? Do you have a certain kind of layout, or do you just kind of use your gut to guide
Well,
this?
well, here's the thing. The thing with Shiro has an agenda, right? So everything that we kind of talked about in terms of what I think this means, what I think this means, what I think, and it's a very big umbrella as we already discussed. But when it comes to coaching in its true essence, I don't need to be the subject matter expert. So you were saying that you're into real estate, right? I don't need to know how the real estate world works. I don't need to know what an engineering platform looks like. I don't need to know how this construction behind our building, like all I need is for a person to come and sit at the table with an open mind, willing to take that moment, willing to be vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
To trust that they're in a safe space, and all we're doing for a 45 to 1 hour session is decluttering. Because what we don't get an opportunity to do in this crazy world, what do? We wake up, before we even touch the floor, we reach for the iPhone, and we're already going through the stuff that has to go through, and then something irks us and throws us off the thing. We've already decided what mood we're in the rest of the day, right? So basically what that coaching platform does is, within that 45 1 hour platform, is that's your sacred space with the coach trained to ask particular questions to get you thinking about things. And you're your subject matter expert. You know what you need to do. You've got the answers inside. I'm giving you that space to, and some of the things that come out even shock the person.
Yeah.
So cluttered, they don't even realize that those are, and then beliefs come out. And then we challenge the beliefs. So in a way, it is in line with Shiro in the sense that it's about personal development. It's about evolution. But I'm not enforcing Shiro beliefs in you. But belief is basically about your evolution, your expansion, helping your business. So in that line, it absolutely fits in, right? It's a business, personal development business platform kind of thing.
Yeah.
By the end of the session, the person is either has this amazing aha moment, or if they don't have an aha moment, I will get a call 2 or 3 days later and saying, you know what, Rebecca, what we were talking about, because usually what happens is I either record the session, or a lot of people are still not comfortable with being recorded. So I take a lot of notes. So I said, I don't want them to take notes. I want them to be in their own world. And I let them have this conversation with questions back and forth and whatnot. And I mean, coaching isn't about going back in time and blaming your parents for this and this happened at the, like, it's not about that. Coaching is, this is the problem I have right now. This is where I'm at. This is where I want to be. And how do I take action steps that my coach will hold me accountable to in the next session, right? Otherwise they'll go and, oh, I forgot to do it. There's accountability.
Everything.
Right? So the accountability is absolutely crucial. So until the next session, and usually between 2 or 3 sessions, that particular topic has to be resolved. Because if it's not resolved, that means you haven't done your homework. Do you know what I mean? So coaching isn't the kind of thing that I want you to, I would love for you to be my client for years.
Nice. I love it.
Different topics, right? Not the same rehash. You're not going to come to me and complain about your husband. You're not going to come to me and complain about your mother-in-law, because they're none of my business. You are my business.
Yes.
Right? And I'm there for you. So the minute you start going off tangent, or the client goes off tangent, you kind of have to reel back in and go, hello, that's your clutter. Is this what you believe, or is this what somebody else thinks that you should believe? And that is actually the key, because when I look back at my life, and I wish back then, Tina, I had a coach.
Okay.
I don't think even coaching existed back then. Like the closest coach was
relative.
Anthony Robbins.
Yeah.
Like it was Anthony Robbins, and he was all about, back in the day, I know even he has had an evolution, but it was about success mastery, and you too make a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And you too could be standing next to this Ferrari and la, la, la. Do you know, like, but it's
was more mind oriented. No, this whole self-awareness kind of wave, it started a while back, but it didn't really quite make itself visible in the last decade, I'd say.
I mean, to me, and I know, like during this COVID time, we were talking about like what is a necessity, what is a business that has to be a necessity, like the supermarkets, like food, this, that, even mechanics shops and all that stuff. But I'm thinking, you know, what we were touching on earlier in terms of at the best of times, we're cluttered.
Yeah.
So now, given the fact that there's so much uncertainty, which causes a lot of angst and fear. What an amazing opportunity to have that space and just kind of differentiate between fact and fiction, fear and manipulation, like just to calm yourself down. And that's what a coaching kind of session would do for somebody, right?
Wow.
It could be your personal life again, or it could be what am I going to do with my business moving forward, or what are some other opportunities? And it gives you an opportunity to ramble. Because another thing, Tina, and I don't know if you can relate to this or if you've been with people in these shoes, a lot of entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to admit what they don't know.
Yeah, of course.
Because
Yeah,
they think it's a sign of weakness,
of course. Yeah.
right? And if they are going to open up to someone, they don't know who they would. Who can they trust that, like when they become famous, this person isn't going to go and have their 15 minutes of fame and say, I knew so-and-so when they were like really troubled. And do you know what I mean? So one of the beauties about a coaching situation is that we are bound by International Coaching Federation guidelines. And it is the same thing in terms of confidentiality as it would be with going to see a lawyer or going to see so you have that.
So people know that that is available. Like
that is available. Now, what makes one coach different than to another is these kind of interviews where you get to know the energy of the person, right? Because not everybody's going to like my energy. I might be too much for them.
Yeah,
So,
no, well, you got to be ready to receive it. Like as we're having this conversation, I completely relate, because I've done a lot of self-development work over the years, but
right?
not everybody's comfortable with that stuff.
No.
And but I think that if you want true freedom, if you want problem solving, I will vouch for it. I have had several times in my life where I've gone either to counseling or coaching in some methodology or form, or consulting, because it's when you have somebody outside of you, that you're able to more rapidly move along. And you said something about decluttering, and it really caught my attention, because isn't it funny that during that whole time, everybody was focused on decluttering the home and decluttering the this and that. And okay,
Not this.
like, what about here? Hello. And it's funny because, Rebecca, as you were talking, I call myself what do I call it? It's a social introvert.
Okay.
So I am on weekends, and that I am like, I love my alone time, and and as you were talking, I'm like, I think I do that because it allows me to finally slow down and
Yeah.
just be with myself, which most people have a challenging time with sometimes, because they're like, those emotions come up. But you need to have that stuff come up. And sometimes you're going through times in life where you really need somebody to be able to guide you through it, and
Right.
sometimes you're just able to flow through it and process the emotions. But I'll tell you that if you don't face the stuff you're meant to face at some point, and I'm sure you have expertise in this area, Rebecca, and experience, it's going to come and slap you in the face. So it's better to face it.
Exactly, to acknowledge it. Like one of the first things like a lot of people talk about, okay, SHERO, what is this, like armchair philosophy? I'm like, no, it's not, because I've lived it, right?
That's
It is
it.
a result of all this business experience. It is a result of my ethnic background. It is a result of my personal relationships. It is, and like I was telling you earlier, I don't share the stories because I want to impress people. Oh, look what I've done. It's about impressing upon them that it is possible for everybody. So it doesn't matter if you think you're conservative or if you think you're liberal. I think the core human values we all have in common. We all have fears. We all have fears, and we're all, if you want to really dissect away at the onion and you peel away and peel away, like during this COVID thing, I really got fixated, like many people out there, to Andrew Cuomo from New York, the governor from New York.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And he was one of the governors that every day he had this, a powwow, like we did here as well. But he brought into the equation the word love. And it was fascinating for me because Cuomo comes from a very, very traditional Italian family, and his father was a very strong Italian. But their core was to help people, and they understood that the main motivation for most of our behaviors comes from either wanting to be loved, lack of love.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like and that fear stems from that. Fear stems from our prehistoric time of being ostracized. Right? Like if we don't do what we're supposed to do within our cultures, if I don't go within, and that was me for the longest time. If I go against what my parents say in terms of having to be with an Armenian, I've never even been to Armenia. I don't even know what the mindset is. But I'm simply raised that way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Worrying about what so and so will say. And then you look outside yourself. And when I was taking political science and learning about all the different nationalities in the world, and because I was always curious, right? Back to the why. The more I got to know everything else, the more I realized there were so many commonalities. And I have to tell you, Tina, since this thing came out and different people have read it, and I started 10 years ago with 0 followers, and I have almost 20,000 on Facebook.
Wow.
And I'm not just throwing out there because it's a number. The point is, they're from everywhere. And the stories that I hear from them, I totally resonated with this. And this is, whether it's from Brazil, whether it's from India, I have like a huge...
Relatable. It's the human element. It's the human element, right?
Well, what tends to happen is in this society that we've created, because it's so us versus them, and because the us versus them is fear-based, it keeps everybody apart, right? Because what happens when you bring people together? It's harder to control and manipulate them, right?
Sure.
So there's a select few would prefer this us versus them kind of rally around the flag. Let's keep the nationalism going, that kind of thing. And that is what I see. And I'm thinking, this is, if never before in history, SHERO has to work now, because it's not, it's just not for you, but once you start thinking along those lines, it just ripples. It just ripples.
There's just no other way. The way I see it is the human race is like, we've evolved in every aspect. The only level left to evolve is the humanity aspect. And that's it. And you know what? It's just like, it doesn't seem like there's any other choice. And I think what I mean by choice is, I think what I mean by that is, it should seem natural that this is just it. And it's, we just have so much opportunity and so much ability to be able to, and it comes back to that love word you mentioned about Andrew Cuomo, and it's just that it doesn't
imagine that level of leadership. Imagine that level of leadership and the other gentleman they have running the country, right? Like, it's just two polar opposites of what there is. But I truly believe somewhere, somehow, you can still reach that man somehow. maybe
he needs a SHERO session.
It's a SHERO session. But I mean, I think one of the things you touched on earlier, and you were saying about accountability and your core values on your wall. Yeah. Just keep this in mind, because when I started with SHERO, people saw that as, oh, it's like perfection. You have to be perfect. So a lot of people would come up to me if I was having a bad day or if I was grumpy and whatever. You're not being very SHERO. Just ready to,
okay, yeah, I could see that.
So my response to that over the years has been, at first I was like, when it's new and you don't own it, you're like, so later on it just becomes, listen, it's not about perfection. It's the pursuit of becoming a better version of yourself day after day. You're going to fall down. Businesses are going to fail. Sure. You're going to have arguments with people. You're going to wish you had handled the situation differently.
Totally.
Well, what makes it different is the fact that you have awareness. You have awareness that, okay, you know what? This happened. I could have handled this differently. I could have talked to my father like this. I could have talked to my employee like this. I could have talked to my client like this, right?
Yes.
I absolutely handle that differently. What can I do better? So it's not like you're rehashing the scenario, but you're trying to like kind of learn about your own behavior. What was really bugging me at that point? What is it that, what was my trigger? What is it that I still have to work on?
Yes. No, I love that you said that. I love that you shared that. No, that's awesome.
Don't be too hard on yourself. You've got these set of goals. Fantastic, because most people don't even get to that stage, right? So you have these goals, and now it's going to be a work in progress. And as you have that sign in the elevator that says evolution, it's going to be a work in progress, and you guys are all going to have to keep yourselves accountable.
Yeah.
And there has to be this kind of trusting environment where when you do hold each other accountable, it's not necessarily a reprimand. It's a conversation.
Exactly.
Because there's two words in the English language: fight and argument, conversation. They mean different things, right? So every time you have a conversation, doesn't mean you're arguing, and it doesn't mean you're fighting.
Yes.
Except when it's me, because I'm very flamboyant and passionate about it. People mistake that. Is she arguing again? What's going on?
I can relate. I talk with my hands too. Yeah, it is a little bit. Sometimes I stop and I look at my team. I'm like, is this too much for you? It's a lot of energy.
It was too much for my ex, trust me.
Passion boils in two directions, so I understand. Yeah, no, it's very true. Oh, and I'm just looking at the clock. Oh,
Okay.
it's been an hour. What the
Oh my
heck?
God, we've been going at it. Sorry. There's a lot to talk about.
I just love this conversation. I am so grateful that I got to meet you. For the longest time, I kept seeing, your neighboring tenant, and I was like, I want to meet Rebecca. Who is Rebecca? Because she stands out, and I could just tell that. I was thinking about this last night. I was like, what is it that I want to share with callers or viewers on this Zoom session? I could tell by meeting you. It just took one instance of meeting you for me to see that there was consistency between the feeling I felt in my gut from the email I received when Lou forwarded that kind gesture that you had shared with our family of tenants for the coaching sessions during COVID to be available to them. I knew that there was a match between that personality. I could see that visibly come to life when I met you in person. And it's just like, I was like, this person's special. I just need to meet them because I know that they are contributing and making the world a better place. And that is something that speaks to me. So thank you so much, number one, for being on this call.
Thank
But
you.
number two, being part of our family of tenants. And you may not know it, but it was kind of, it was a time of evolution and change. And when I saw your email, it gave me energy on one of my lowest days. Because I just knew that somebody was, yeah, exactly. And you had no idea, right? But you shifted my world because there was days where the hours were so long and I was just like, is this making a difference? Is anybody getting that we're really trying to help? And you just sent that one email and just our whole team just like, just lit up. So
hi, I'm SHERO. Hi.
Thankfully, you're located at our head office. So for those of you who are interested in connecting with Rebecca, just amazing personality, amazing human being. But really, if you're looking for that next step, for that sign, for that gut response that you've been looking for to get clarity, I can tell you right here, I've learned so much during this call. I've had little nuggets, just like light bulbs, and I'm sure that they will accompany me in the next couple days as well, if not weeks. So yeah, reach out to her, SHERO, on Instagram. Your handle is?
I am SHERO. So everything is not necessarily that I am SHERO, but I'm basically encouraging people to start thinking that they are SHERO, to awaken the SHERO within, because I truly believe that everyone has it in them. They just have to push themselves to that next level. And not only will they be helping themselves, but they will be helping humanity. A lot of people look for leadership from top down in terms of come and save us. And no, it starts from here, inside out.
Yeah.
You do that, a whole bunch of people start projecting that way. You start attracting relationships that you want. You start attracting customers that you want. You start attracting the kind of friendships that you want. And I mean, this totality of like this limitless. You can have anything and everything you desire. And I'm not talking about money. That would be a byproduct for sure. But in terms of like where you want to be, where you want to work, what you want to do, all that becomes very clear. The why that started this journey for me. Why do I have to, once the why is important and crucial for you, you will do anything and everything to make things happen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to get off the call because I got another meeting after this, but
thank you so much for this.
Rebecca, it was such a pleasure just spending it didn't even feel like an hour. It just flew by. Have yourself a great afternoon and we'll talk to you soon.
And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again for the opportunity. Take care.
Bye, my pleasure.
Bye.